Well, I think we'll get started. My name is Keith Kruger, CEO of CoSN, and we've got a great topic today, and that is AI automation and the future of K-12 networks. And I'm very excited with the panelists that we have today. These are joining us today are three experts on AI and K-12, and they're going to be telling us a little bit about what's happening in the school systems that they work in. And we're going to be presenting a little bit of data today. We've done a survey of CoSN. CoSN is the National Association for Heads of Technology in School Districts. And we just over the summer did a survey. I'll give a little bit of details in a minute, but first of all, let's introduce the three experts that we have here. Dr. Richard Charles, the CIO from Denver. Richard, tell us a little bit about your background.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. Very excited to be here today. I'm Richard Charles. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Denver Public Schools and was introduced to artificial intelligence during my undergraduate years. Spent some time working in computer vision and really doing some exciting work there, and came out to Denver back in 1992 to work on some AI products and services at the time. And so since that time, spending a lot of time conducting some penetration testing. I'm a mathematician by training formally, and so I get to do some really exciting work in proving things and being able to talk about validity of different algorithms and things of that nature. So that's my background, and I'm excited to share any knowledge that the folks would like to hear about.
Great. We also have an expert from industry, but he's also spent time in the public sector, Eric Heinrich. Eric, tell us a little bit about what you do for HPE and the work there.
Yeah, good morning, Keith, and I appreciate being here. Thank you for having me join you and these other great experts here. So today I'm the K-12 Field CTO for Juniper Networks, an HPE company. Been in network manufacturing companies for over 11 years now. Been a former board member with Shelby.org. Spent 7 years with the San Francisco Unified School District as a technology director and an interim CTO. So I have a little public sector experience there. It's a very enlightening period of time, which kind of molded my journey from there in the private sector. But before that, I had come from private sector, Pacific Stock Exchange, running high frequency trading networks. And prior to that with Sony PlayStation in the video game computer entertainment industry. Technologist at heart, gamer at heart, and AI just ties directly into a lot of those passions. So the proverbial squiggly line of career paths. Happy to be with you today.
Great. And last but not least is Pete Just, former chair of the board of CoSN and runs our Indiana chapter. And Pete, tell a little bit about your background.
Well, I come solidly from the instructional background. I started life as a I started life in K-12 at least as a biology teacher, and did that for 13 years actually while I worked on moving into leadership roles, administration. My wife is an educator as well, principal, elementary teacher. So I've been steeped in that and surrounded by that. I moved up through the ranks on the west side of Indianapolis and became chief operations officer and oversaw all the technology there, and left that role left a full-time gig to do 5 part-time gigs is what I joke about. So I'm also the subject matter expert for CoSN, as Keith mentioned. Really excited to talk about our survey today.
Great. So let's get to it. This is a new survey we just released this week. We thank HPE for helping us do it. It's a survey of CoSN member school districts. We had the lead person, the chief technology officer or CIO or whatever their title is, answer the question. And we wanted to specifically look at operational AI and how it's being applied in K-12. We know there's a lot of focus on instructional uses appropriately. That is the mission of school districts. But we also think AI can apply to the way we do business in K-12. And it was a short 15 question survey. And this today is the first day that we're actually kind of publicly talking about it. You can access the survey either with the QR code you see on the screen for those of you joining the webinar, or you can just go to cosn.org/AI, and you'll find all the resources, including the report. I will say at cosn.org/AI, you will see two infographics from the data in the report, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those later. So let's get to some of the top line data. First of all, we are seeing that school districts are using AI in network environments. 57% said that they are doing that. But there's a big but, and that is it's not extensively used. In fact, most are using it less than 10% in their network processes. And I think I'm going to turn first to Richard. And, how are you in the Denver Public Schools? How are you using AI for operations? And, are there reasons that you think this hasn't scaled bigger or faster yet? Oh, I think you're on mute, Richard.
Sorry about
There you
that. In Denver Public Schools, we are really focused on the use of AI for operations, specifically knowledge-centered services, help desk types of data management. So how do you solve a problem? How do you reuse that information so that multiple users can leverage that same information? And more broadly, we're very interested in using it for knowledge management, um, getting the right information, right and accurate information in the right hands at the right moment, right? So how do you manage all of that? One of the challenges to knowledge management in the past has been it's just too much information to manage. However, large language models and some of these AI systems are fully capable of addressing that volume of information. And so how do you weed through all of that data in order to use it effectively and to glean any sort of insights from the data is something that we're very interested in. So last year we wrote a white paper on its use. We're looking at partnering with some of our local universities partners to be able to establish some repositories of instructional strategies that our teachers can use, and more broadly, some of the best practices in how to do business across the board in the different roles that we have in the organization. I think one of the reasons why it's challenging is because, it's all new, and you all know as well that AI is doubling in power every 5.6 months now, I think is the latest number that I saw, which means that things continue to change rapidly. So as soon as we anchor ourselves in a particular technology, the next release of the technology either removes that feature or adds additional things. So it's a bit of a challenge for us. We're also trying to keep ahead of the curve with that and trying to do our best.
Yeah, and K-12 isn't exactly overstaffed, so it's a little challenging. So Pete, I'm curious, as you work either across Indiana or work with our members across the United States, what does this data say to you?
Well, it's interesting. I spent the morning with our Indiana ASBO members in Northern Indiana, and we had about 50, 60 school district leaders there. And by show of hands, the vast majority of them had used generative artificial intelligence in some way. But when I said what, they said, oh, help write letters. So not a very deep level, but they're starting, right? So a year ago, they weren't raising their hands at all. So as much as I would have loved 2.5 years ago to say in the next year, we're going to see a big sea change in education and operations. There's so many opportunities here. although that's true, I think, as usual, educators tend to be cautious in adoption, as we should be. We're not going to write policy or even administrative guidelines unless we understand what this means to us. And I think that because of the rapid change, as Dr. Charles was saying, it's been hard to get a grasp on exactly what it is we're talking about when we talk about AI. And unfortunately, while we've been thinking about it, trying to get a grasp and understanding, the reality is, whether you're a Microsoft shop, a Google shop, or who knows what else, it's becoming integrated in everything we do. So you can't do a search today without getting a summary, right? So what everyone's realizing is that they don't have the ability to stave off what's coming. And that's probably the biggest change I've seen in terms of an attitude that, yeah, we have to do something, but now where do we start? And I think that's one of the great things we have to offer at CoSN is an on-ramp into how to begin your path towards maturity with generative AI.
Eric, anything you'd like to add on this topic?
Yeah. No, I think those are great observations, but I'll start by saying I think that 57% statistic is interesting, because I would call that sort of the tipping point in terms of making this mainstream. This is something you see discussed in sort of the Gartner hype cycle, is something frequently referred to that we all talk about, right? Where it kind of comes out at first and everybody hypes up what is possible, and then when they realize, oh, right now, what is operational, what I can actualize from this potential is maybe less than what has been marketed about its potential, because we're not able to yet take full advantage of it. And then I believe we're in this what's called slope of enlightenment, where we're starting to understand better what is possible, and then starting to employ it in ways that are more accessible to users at a deeper level. So I think there's also been, up until now, a trust factor limitation, where people were not sure what it is. And so, with great, I would say with trust kind of comes understanding. And with that understanding, a reduction in the fear that people have around it, or uncertainty of what is it and what might it do. And we've been building that trust. And so we're on this slope where people are starting to see it employed. I think Richard made a great point there around their use in support. Support is a great place where we've seen the initial use in knowledge management, taking all this body of data of what the problem is, and then quickly being able to sort it in a way that apply it then to the particular case. What we're hoping to do is get ahead of that, which we can talk about in some future slides here. But I think that was a key message there, as well as Pete said, right, which is people are using it for sort of simple things today in terms of generative AI, writing a letter. I think people are learning with time that there is much more possible.
That's great, Eric. Actually, that's a great transition. We asked the question of, what's your number one challenge to doing to using AI for operations, and it was lack of skill and expertise. And I'm sort of curious, Pete, when you see that statistic, what kind of skill and expertise do you think they're talking about? What are they lacking?
Well, I think, again, reflecting on this morning, and by the way, Eric, I used the Gartner hype cycle this morning, showing them 24 versus 25 and saying that was done, months ago. So yeah, we're in that slope of enlightenment and trying to find productivity. And I think that in terms of skill, it's being able to make the transition between the basic things that you could do to how does that impact how I just make decisions, and how I find out information from contracts, and, how do I do more complex AI related things, and what even are those? So I think the skill is being able to keep up with the rapidly evolving skill set, I guess I'd say, of AI, and even like being able to understand what is agentic AI and how might that help my finance team. There's a great opportunity there, but like, how do I operationalize what I see and what's available to me? I think that's the biggest gap that we're seeing right now, is being able to go from where people understand the basic, like, oh, I see it generates things, and I could use it for email, to, being able to actually impact your staffing shortage, because you need 5 FTEs, but you're never going to get them. So how do you make your current team more effective in the work they do? They're having there's that gap of knowing how do you get across that ravine of knowledge.
Eric, I've heard you mention kind of democratizing AI. How does that relate to this area of skills and expertise?
Yeah, what Pete is saying is true, not just for K-12, but I think for all industries right now. There's mass adoption of AI, but not everybody is or can be an AI expert, which we don't want that to be a barrier. And so what I think is sort of a key strategy to overcoming that is is to make AI transparent and integrated within the products and services that you're building so that your end user does not need to be the AI expert, but rather that it is sort of built into the functions that they're doing, right? So behind the scenes within the software, the ability for the software to be making suggestions to you and then presenting it to you in normal, natural language model, right? So using tools that are AI tools to work with us the way that we work as humans. So it's an augmentative, it's helpful to us. And then I'll also mention, Pete mentioned agentic AI. I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with that term, so I just want to call it out that, we had algorithms initially, and then now we've been talking about AI. We had machine learning where it's looking at data and then perhaps identifying patterns within that data. Then we've had generative AI, which we think of, making images of humans with 6 fingers and 3 feet, and then some writing letters for us, right? Some fairly novel kind of things. And agentic AI is giving agency to your automation based on the information that it is able to collect, analyze, sort, prioritize, categorize, all of these things that AI is good at doing, putting it through multiple different models necessary to then make some sort of automation or thing happen, right? To actualize a change based on what it is seeing with AI. So I think it's doing all of that, but putting it into the background so that it's just happening, and that the end user maybe has some control or has sort of, I would call that sort of the brake pedal. When you think of cruise control, you put cruise control on, but if you tap the brakes, it turns off the function so that you can take over, right? And I think this is sort of a natural evolution when you think about it as the evolution of cruise control with some ability to take back over controls if there should be some change in inputs needed.
That's a helpful metaphor. Thank you, Eric. Richard, in Denver, how are you kind of upskilling your team? Or are they just doing it on their own?
No, we were intentional in upscaling our staff members. There were two handbooks that were developed, one for the instructional side of the house and another for the operational side of the house. So we spent the last year developing that operational handbook and starting to train folks in the central office on how to use artificial intelligence responsibly. And so we went out, and different departments signed up, and HR came in, and we chatted with them and spoke to them about some of the safety concerns around some of the bias that they may see in some of the tools that they would be considering to use. And I think it enlightened a lot of folks. One of the things that came up that was pretty exciting for us is that the tool Notebook LM is a great way for us to be able to have a localized sandbox to be able to manage all of the concerns around data privacy. And so that's one of the tools that we share with the organization and employees who have operational roles. And we have them load in their policies or load in whatever their practices are, and then start to query these systems on exactly what that pending question is that they may have around that. The other thing that's really important is keeping in mind that there's stories after stories in the news, right? The bad stories about poor operational use, AI companies having kids standing at bus stops because the scheduling that the AI did was poor. Just a reminder that we always have to be mindful of the fact that you should always have a human in the loop in any of these things that we're doing, right? That's critically important because the maturity of these models is not where they will need to be just yet, and the models that we're using today are the least intelligent that they will be in the future. So keep that in mind as we go through that process.
Great point, Richard. So one of the, we did a, what is the top kind of use case for AI in operations? And there was a clear answer, and that was network security. And I'm going to flip it back to Pete. Tell us a little bit about what the data told us around security, and why do you think that's such an opportunity for K-12?
Well, with network security, obviously we have continuing and mounting threats on our environments as K-12. We're still getting used to the fact that we're targets. For so long, we lived in a world where we were not. And so now that we are, and with the combination of that and AI coming alongside our attackers to be able to help them as well as help us, we have to find ways to leverage the AI to help us. So districts are hoping AI can help them to, detect attacks earlier, be able to perhaps in an automated fashion, be able to respond to those attacks, help with the staff workloads, trying to protect the sensitive data that we have, trying to level the playing field. But right now, it's still sort of in that same place with the operational challenges of, how do we make that happen? There's not a lot of, we would love to have just an option to turn something on, and that's not really the way it is yet. But I think that's what we're hoping for. But that's what we've seen.
Yeah, and Pete, in the survey, there were a number of possible use cases in the area of security, like security threat detection, documentation generation, anomaly detection and alerting, user and entity behavior analytics, vulnerability, I guess it's called CVE detection, traffic analysis and optimization, action recommendations, network performance and optimization, natural language processing, predictive maintenance, self-healing, load balancing, network capacity planning, dynamic network scaling, and intent-based networking. So those are, if you're interested in the specifics of that, you can go to the survey and read that. So I'm going to turn it over back to Eric. How do you from the private sector think about the opportunities for K-12, and what are you seeing happening around that?
Yeah, I think what you'll notice there's an overarching theme here that we've been talking about, which is too much information, too few people, and overload essentially of the demand, right? And our brains are limited in the number of things that we can process. I've heard different numbers, but I understand we can make on average about 60 critical decisions as a human every day, right? So this is why some of the famous folks in technology who wear the same clothes every day, one of the factors that they say is that's one key decision that they did not have to make that day. It allowed, and it comes from psychological science. This is well proven that we have finite amount of decision-making ability. So I think AI in cybersecurity, there's tons of data coming in from all different sources and different systems, and the ability to have oversight across all of them simultaneously, and not just from 9 to 5 when school is open, right? I mean, the hackers don't go to sleep when the students leave school, right? So it's the ability to have proactive monitoring and response 24/7, 365 with visibility across all of those systems, including looking at what we would deem to be regular or normal operational network level data, right? So we know what a normal network looks like. We may know what an anomalous activity looks like, and we can flag it. This is something unusual, an unusual pattern. We don't expect to see this under these circumstances from this device, this location at this time, from this user, right? You can start adding correlations to these things and context to them, and then enabling automations to make decisions. So the idea here is using it for cybersecurity should, in fact, avoid the problem. It can, in fact, detect things in advance. And as you add things like agents which can act as a client that you can script to do malicious things, which we think of as red team testing or pen testing. You can do these things and schedule them out of hours as a network operator to have something act like a student device in a particular classroom, acting in a certain way, and have the network look at what is normal and is not normal, and then to give it agency as part of an agentic AI approach to then make changes to prevent something negative from occurring on the network. So I think there's huge opportunity, and I think this is a great fit for AI, so long as it has access to the right data across the right systems. I think we're going to see an incredible change in the security posture of schools across the U.S.
I would agree with that. And Keith, you read off kind of all the different items that schools were considering or wanting to have help with. I mean, the bottom line is we don't have enough staff to take on the threat. We don't have modern enough systems to take on the threat, and we're looking at reduced funding. So, in the midst of that milieu of, different things pulling back and forth, what we're hoping for is something that can kind of be adopted. And I think Eric's right. We'll probably see something that is going to be much more powerful than what we have today in the next year or two, to be able to help with all those things. Hopefully it's priced in a way that also will help schools out, because a lot of times those tend to be more expensive solutions. So at this point in time, as we saw from the survey, we're looking in a lot of directions for help, but help needs to come in terms of helping staff scale up, as we were talking about earlier, in automating some of these solutions that the new threats are bringing.
Richard, anything you'd like to add from the perspective of Denver and how you're thinking about network security and AI?
Absolutely. I thought Pete and Eric raised some really excellent points around this. I remind people all the time that there's central office buildings or buildings the size of central offices in other countries with hackers just filling every room, and their job really is to penetrate a variety of organizations, but K through 12 over the last number of years has been really rising on that target list, and so we're concerned around that. So as a result of that, phishing attacks are much more sophisticated. We no longer can detect things by misspellings and things of that nature. And they now harness information off the web and include that into their phishing attacks. So things are getting much more sophisticated. And as a result, our real concern is around data security. Still is. Data privacy is still a major concern. And Eric was talking about agentic AI. We're looking at a system that can load an agent client on every machine so that we can detect whether or not teachers or any users within our system are uploading information to the large language models. Because I think that is our biggest concern right now, and we're going to explore that quite a bit.
Okay, and if network security didn't get your attention, the other big finding in the survey was a bit the concern around dirty or siloed data. 61% saying that was a major concern. And I'm wondering, Pete, does that surprise you, or is that what you'd expect?
No surprise here. This is not a new thing to education. Unfortunately, we don't do a great job training those who do the data input. And with that, then, therefore, there's a lack of standardization. So we even have our own people putting data in different ways, which means it's hard to parse. So this is not a new problem. Anyone that's changing their SIS system knows that the first thing to do is to clean up your data set before you start that new one. But once you're going for a while, you don't change those SIS systems. And so you continue to have systems that put bad data in. And in the world of AI, we're wanting more and more to parse some of that data to be able to make decisions based on it. Now we have the task of kind of trying to find a way to clean it up or ignore it, and that's not an easy task. So this is not I'm honestly surprised the number is not higher. It's something that's been on our minds for quite some time, though. So people have been working on simplifying systems, training staff so that they are following better practices. And it's going to have an impact on our use of AI down the road if we don't get that taken care of. So not a surprise, no easy solutions here other than hard work, honestly.
Eric, what are you thinking about when you see this statistic?
I'm sorry, you said Pete.
Sorry,
I believe.
Oh, I said Eric.
Eric,
Sorry.
okay.
Okay. No, so I think this is an interesting one, right? The saying that I like to think of is garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you put bad data into a system, you're going to get bad results. It's just the way it works. It's only working off of the information that it has, right? And so I agree here, where I think we're going to see the need increasingly. These systems that are starting to use and try to use AI, you will see a difference between those systems where they were built with AI in mind versus those that may have AI be bolted on. The back ends of the management of that data is critical, right? So the hygiene is one end where it comes in. We call that data hygiene, right? The cleanliness of that data as it's being input is one part of it. But then how that data is managed inside the system, either flagged or marked or correlated, or AI it will help with that as well, be able to learn about the data set itself, structure it, clean it, normalize the data, do things of that nature. And then also then be able to use that cleaner data, better data to make better decisions. But ultimately, those systems that have been designed for that use of AI versus kind of adding AI on at the end, again, you'll end up with garbage in, garbage out if that system doesn't have clean data coming into it and the right data coming into it to make the right decisions.
Yeah. And CoSN has a long-standing work in the area of helping districts think through their privacy and data and a trusted learning environment seal. Richard, how are you thinking about this challenge of dirty or siloed data?
Yeah, I was just going to say there's no substitute for data quality management. And so monitoring the quality of your data, making sure that if you are the creator of any information, that information is accurate, and then also process quality management. Those two things over the years still continue to be extremely valuable. As Eric mentioned, garbage in, garbage out, right? So we just went through an ERP process right now, went live in January, and we are still seeing some of the artifacts of some of our processes and data not being where they need to be. And so keep that in mind. And also, as we continue to push the envelope and doing new things, we're discovering that some of the software applications that we had in-house didn't have those test cases in place. And so there would be errors that would be flowing from that. So just making sure that you're mindful of those processes.
Great. Well, one of the second part of the survey that we did is we wanted to know where school districts are in terms of their maturity. And over the last really 2 years, we've partnered with the Council of the Great City Schools to develop a maturity model. And I'll let Pete explain what that is, and then we'll get into some of the data and where we are with that maturity model.
Thanks, Keith. So yeah, we've been using this and improving upon this maturity model. We've had 4 revisions now over the last 2 years, and it started with the readiness checklist that was provided to us by the council. A number of technology leaders across the country came together to develop that. It's really just a set of questions. Where are you at with your AI implementation? And like I said, many districts are just at an early stage. And the maturity tool has grown to include 7 different domains. Executive leadership, which is the leadership of the cabinet, and what does maturity at that level look like in terms of when you're leading a school district as an executive leader? What are the things you're thinking about? What are the things you're doing? What is your maturity in regard to that? And then the thing that many focus on from the get-go, which is the classroom or the academic IT literacy side. There's a domain that is focused around that idea. And then there's 5 other domains, so 7 in total: operational readiness, data readiness, technical readiness, security readiness, and legal and risk management are the other 5. So with all 7 of those domains, we measure maturity across the whole school district. Now, when we look at maturity, obviously a lot of schools are right here. They're not sure where to start. They're not sure what their readiness level is. This is like level 0. You know about this, but you've done nothing about this. The next level is this emerging. You're starting to talk through adoption. You're having conversations at the highest levels. And that is where it should start, by the way. We believe strongly, along with AASA and ASBO and other leadership organizations, that the cabinet level decision makers, the school board, should be making decisions. And the first thing, of course, is what are your initial guardrails? Because if you're not doing anything, that means you're doing nothing. You have no guardrails. Your teachers and everyone can do whatever they please. And that is never good, especially in a world like this where false information can come out, biased information can come out. So we have some preliminary guardrails, and that would be part of emerging. And what starts happening then is you move through emerging with minimal dedicated resources around AI initiatives. You move into this next level, which we call developing, and this tends to have evidence. So you might then have that document that is your guardrails document that says, this is how we're going to train teachers, or this is what we expect of teachers, or if we're letting students use it. And by the way, you don't have to let students use it for them to use it. So all your students are using it. So it might be a good idea to put guardrails in for students as well. Just minimum things that say, if you use AI, you need to acknowledge this. It's a matter of ethics. And this is a new idea, being able to integrate ethics. I'm joking, it's not really new. It's a idea that really should be more seriously considered because it's so easy to use AI. And the AI checkers are not very accurate, I'll just say, because A, it changes all the time, and B, there's a lot of ways to hide your use of AI. So developing level has evidence that you have systems in place, policies, governing structures are happening and developing. And then finally, the mature level, which is this level here, you've got a deeper understanding and expertise. There are not too many districts in all 7 of the domains and all 53 of the subdomains that are going to find themselves mature. Most of the districts are going to be on the left-hand side of this spectrum, and I would say the vast majority are someplace between unknown and emerging. So when we think about that, this is what we're trying to survey to kind of get a better understanding of where everyone is at in terms of CoSN leadership, or CoSN members in leadership roles in their districts. And so that's what we're going to take a look at next. No surprise, right? We're kind of on that. And this is flipped actually from the maturity model explanation. So level 0 is now on the right. So data kind of pretty high over there, and then level 1. And they were not looking at the maturity model to make these determinations. So this is a little bit freewheeling in terms of the alignment between the two. But we see that there are not too many nobody in the mature side, and very few in that maturing side, what we call level 2. Keith, I don't know if there's
is there
anything that you want to share.
No,
I'll tell you what, let me ask a question. I know, Richard, that you've been working really heavily on this, kind of trying to move the needle and trying to get your district to move forward with AI. So you're kind of on the top end of the scale, I would say. Your background obviously gives you a significant advantage. What advice would you give to school districts that are looking to, increase their maturity? What are early steps?
Yeah, we were lucky enough in DPS to be one of the co-authors of the readiness checklist, and so in that regard, we got a jump start on establishing the guardrails. But I think the first step really is to get a cross-functional committee together across the entire organization. There's no one person in any K through 12 school that should be owning AI. It is a daunting task to do that. And it really doesn't bode well because you will have a very myopic view of the organizational needs. So establishing that cross-functional committee is key. It was key for us, and then we quickly started developing a guardrail policy around this work. It's policy EIAI, and it's available online through board docs. And then we had an acceptable use policy for students that was revised to make sure that students are aware, that we are aware of all the things that AI can do. And we talked about unethical usage of AI and making sure that you're responsible as you enter and use and leverage this technology. We also saw a bit of a challenge with some teachers feeling that they can use AI detectors to check for cheating and things of that nature. And all of the research, I think the most recent one was done by Stanford University that talked about the accuracy of these systems being not where they need to be. And so do not is a recommendation. Tend to use these things for the purpose of detecting any sort of academic dishonesty, because there are significant problems with it. The other thing to keep in mind too is that these systems can be influenced. I've read some articles recently that have been published that talk about other organizations being able to influence the large language models in its responses by feeding it additional data. So the training data establishes a terrain for all of the things that a large language model should know. And then if you feed it additional information, then you can actually change some of the conclusions. So we're just mindful of that, and we're trying our best to continue that cross-functional committee and to just do the grind. It's a tough task to keep track of all of the changes that are happening from each application. From release to release. So we are a Google organization, and we're trying our best to stay ahead of it.
Great.
If I can
Eric,
chime in,
yeah, please.
I have a thought, so from an industry perspective, right? I think that we have an obligation to very clearly document our AI tools and what we're putting into our products. And from just speaking from how our products work, we strip all from a network perspective. We strip the payload data, so we don't want to know what the content of the network is doing. We want to know how the network is doing, right? Health of the network, not what the network is transporting around it, right? So as a network vendor, we have an obligation and responsibility to help in this process. I think what I would encourage school districts and school district leaders to do is to interrogate their vendors around how they've implemented AI, what that AI is actually sharing, where it gets it, how it's policed, and policies are applied to it, right? We have a responsibility, I think, as industry leaders to, given our expertise, given the fact that we're the ones putting this technology, making it available, integrating into these tools, we have a part to play in educating where possible, where it's desired, helping to educate customers, users, school districts, school district leaders, both on the technology side and across the board, the leadership side, where it's possible. So we're making every effort as an industry leader in AI to help inform, to be a kind of a co-participant, because what we are also finding is we have a lot to learn too. We are not ultimately the experts who are diving in like Richard is, and day to day seeing how that data is used, how they want to use that data. So I think it's really about partnership in large part. So I would encourage school districts to find trusted partners who maybe have some expertise in this, and to put them to the test, right? And ask them the tough questions to demonstrate that they know what they're talking about. Don't just take their word for it that you're going to throw some data in there and you're going to get these amazing results. Ask to see how the sausage is made to the best of their ability.
Eric, I would go a step further and say, make a request of these vendors that just slapping AI on their products is not serving anyone, right? So let's make sure that there's some independent organizations like CoSN or Council of Great City Schools establishing some suite of benchmarks that we can use with some of these tools to be able to really get some insight as to whether or not it's an API that we're using or some other version of software.
Pete, any tips that you have? And I see we have a question I'll get to in just a second.
I agree with everything that both Richard and Eric said. I hope that we can partner, CoSN or others on behalf of all of our districts with vendors who are trying to figure out how do we integrate the best of the AI, capabilities into our tool, and how do we do so transparently? If we can move forward in that way, I think that would really be productive for the whole industry. I think it's a win-win situation. We're all looking at an unknown future, but certainly a future that includes a lot of AI. So the best way to move forward, I think, is together. And thanks for that comment, Eric. I think that's really important. And for schools that are looking, you do need to, just as you always do, have an awareness of what types of things might be impacting your adoption. And obviously the same type of data concerns that we've had, student data privacy concerns, the things that you build into your software license agreements are increasingly important. And obviously, what data is being collected once an AI component is added is an important new piece of that.
Vic in the chat has asked an interesting question of whether we're seeing more district-wide adoption of AI tools, or are we seeing more letting individual schools select their own AI products at the school level.
I would
Any
love
thoughts,
to address
Kevin?
this. It's a good question, and thanks so much for asking it, Vic, because unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of districts start with just an adoption of a tool. They haven't defined their why they want to use AI, and they're adopting something, and that's natural in some ways because you can write a PO and theoretically problem solved. That's certainly not the case, right? We wouldn't do that with anything else. So in most cases, I've seen districts doing the adoptions as a way to try to address the need to get going with AI. I would say that their first step should probably be some internal conversations at the leadership level, use the executive leadership maturity tool, that domain, to have these conversations and try to determine like what are the guardrails, and then start, if you want to have something for your teachers, start looking at tools. But we never adopt tools before we adopt policy. We never adopt tools before we have practices and whys in place. So I think that's the challenge that we're facing right now. Is it seems like an easy win, and they really are great tools, but you have to prepare the ground. You don't throw seeds on ground that hasn't been properly I'm looking out the window at farm field. So, seeds that have a ground that hasn't been properly prepared. So we need to prepare the ground by putting these guardrails in place, having that conversations at the highest level of the organization. And then we reduce the risks as well because we're more in charge of the forward momentum.
Richard, how's a big district like Denver thinking about AI solution adoption, and how do you factor in equity in?
Yeah, we've been very conservative since the get-go. We revamped our software purchase process in order to anticipate some of the challenges, and we have somewhat of a rubric for determining the risks associated with a particular tool. I spent a lot of time doing some penetration testing investigations and seeing where these things can go wrong. A recent paper that I published talked a bit about some of these tools that make assumptions about it's called simulated child confusion. And if a student is acting as if they don't clearly understand what the lesson plan is or the objective is, it tries to help them in some way. And all of a sudden, it's giving up really sensitive information about how not to combine chemicals and things of that nature. So there's some gaps in these systems. It's very serious. So we centrally are making those decisions rather than leaving it up to schools, because I think the damage that can be done would be great. And then the final point that we are really concerned about is whether or not the data that is being entered into these systems goes on to train these systems in some way, right? Because that's not a good situation either. Some of these systems will take that data, use it as a training of the model itself, and next thing you know, that data is showing up to other users across the world. So we have to be mindful of that, and that's what we've been doing.
Eric, I assume you primarily work in system-wide adoption, but any particular tips for school districts as they're thinking about applying these new AI capabilities on a system-wide basis?
Yeah, I'll just jump on to expand on what Richard was saying there around, you know, AI is only as intelligent as the information that you're able to feed it, right? The learning data that it is taking, and it's a key part of making it useful, but is also of concern if that data then, how does that data then come out of the other end of this AI function? And so I think when adopting things on a systemic level, it is important, right? So the way that we're looking at network is, like I mentioned earlier, stripping parts of the data that's not necessary to retain. We do not want to see the payload data of network information. I think that's also possible for many different systems to be intelligent enough as to what it is that they're looking at, what pieces of the data. Obviously from a network perspective, looking at it, the network is a system of many connected things. Everything is connected by definition of what a network and networking is from the end user device. And so I would argue that there's no real technology silos. And I know this is going to be controversial. I'm a former IT guy, so I used to describe how everybody was running their own shadow IT in schools. That still happens, of course. But I would say at the end of the day, much or the vast majority of this intersects and interconnects at some part. It's very little use to have a device these days that does not connect to something else, right? A standalone device. And so we think of technology as something that is interconnected. And so we have a systems oriented deployment of anything that's AI from our perspective. And the more visibility, actually, the better. So even those silos of shadow IT that may exist from a networking perspective, we're going to see that at some point. AI is going to have the ability, or I should say, already has the ability to have visibility to all of that on some level. The network all connects and all exchanges data, whether you know it or not. If your phone passes an access point, for example, whether or not you join that wireless network, your phone is sending probe requests out to that radio. The radio is seeing it and recording it. And so this is how we know where people are, even if you've joined that Wi-Fi or not, right? And so I think similarly, the modern world of technology is all interconnected. And so ultimately it is a system of systems sort of approach. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how we look at it from our perspective.
Great. And there's a little bit of a chat back and forth with our friend Ann McMullen asking about how to educate parents and community about these use of AI. And Pete has put some reference from work by CoSN. But I think we're running out of time, but I want to give each of the three of you a chance to, if there was one thing you'd like to leave the audience with, what would that be? What should they do or not do around thinking about AI and operations?
I'll start.
I'll jump in. Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
All right, I'll start. I'll say, don't overcomplicate this. You need to think about how AI can be used in operations. You need to put guardrails in place at the district level for all employees. You need to understand your why for why you would do AI integration. If you could start with something simple like that, and just, again, having spoken to many schools who are just scratching their head, not sure where to go, this is a good place to start. And then I would be remiss to not say, think about bringing your team to Charlotte or Denver in October or November, because CoSN has some events going on around the AI maturity tool. So if you are a little further along than most, that might be the perfect place for you.
Eric, anything you would like to?
That's great. Yeah, I'll say, to expand on that, find the areas where you're comfortable. And, Richard explained how they're using it within their support team. I think that's a great start, right? Is for things that can help you with some concrete operational efficiencies. And then slowly start layering in additional areas. AI is here to stay. I'd encourage people not to be fearful of it, but to rather get rid of any fear by educating, learning about it, testing it, employing it, and don't be afraid to bring it in. It's coming. We've seen that we're past the tipping point of adoption, and also talk to your peers. Not only expertise from CoSN, but CoSN helps bring your peers together. You have school districts all around you. Reach out to them. There's great communities that you can work with to get more information about it.
And Richard, you've been a font of tips and thoughts. So what's your one most important thing to leave with?
I think Pete and Eric did a great job. I would also remind you all that the kindergartners today are the graduating class of 2037, right? And so their world is going to have AI everywhere and quantum everywhere, which we didn't talk about. But think of how you are preparing your students for a world that we know nothing about, right? So it's a daunting task. Don't be afraid to use some of these tools. AI has the potential of solving some really difficult problems for humanity, and it's very exciting. But at the same time, we need to be cautious. And so, don't be afraid to jump in, get a Google account or an OpenAI account, and try it out yourself. But when it comes to school districts, just follow these guidelines.
Yeah. And a reminder that you can access this report and all the survey findings that we've talked about at cosn.org/AI. And we want to thank HPE Juniper Networks for their support in making this possible. And Eric, anything last you want to say?
We wanted to thank CoSN for allowing us to participate in this. Richard, Pete, it's been a pleasure to join you all. And HPE genuinely wants to be a consultative partner in this. And so I say it sincerely, not to hesitate to engage with us. We would love to come in and share what our knowledge is around AI with your leadership, with your IT team, with your operations team. Anything that we can do to help is what we're here to do. So thank you for having us today.
Great. Well, thank you all, and have a wonderful afternoon, and onward. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now.